views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Welcome to Public Health America, a 30-minute program on BronxNet where we talk with national experts to promote health and social justice. I'm your host, Dr. William Latimer. We begin by focusing on a current health topic from the COVID pandemic to cardiovascular disease. Our goal is to provide you with not only the best science, but practical tips to live a healthier life. On Public Health America, we also celebrate what studies have long documented, namely the unparalleled value of a college education by setting the stage to pursue a career of your choice, increase lifetime earnings and opportunity, and champion the ability to engage in civil debate. But for many, finding a path to college is neither clear nor certain. What if you're a high school student with supportive parents, but feel daunted by the prospect of being the first in your family to attend college? What if you're a single mother or father and want to attend college, but have no childcare? On Public Health America, our expert will also talk about decisions they made and support they received that helped them beat the odds. By sharing one or two life lessons, their stories may provide you with the inspiration and method to realize your dreams. This is Public Health America. Welcome to Public Health America. I'm your host, Dr. William Latimer. It is such a pleasure and privilege to have with us today Dr. LaKeisha Thorpe, Chief Officer for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Chestnut Hill College in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. LaKeisha, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here with you.
Great to have you here. So LaKeisha, looking at the landscape of higher education over the past 20 or so years, certainly I would suggest the positions that focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion have been around, but I would suggest, though I'd much rather get your perspective, that having positions like this one at higher education institutions is becoming much more prevalent in the last few years. I think it's very much needed. Is that your sense that it's becoming more prevalent? And if so, why now? And also, what would you define as the major aim or aims of this important position?
I love this question. As our country has gone through a lot of transition, I'll say, over the last year or two, maybe even 3 years now, it's kind of been a constant revolving door of change. I think the summer of George Floyd did something in the sense that it brought a lot of things to the forefront, things that have been happening. Those of us, people of color, have been living with these things for our lifetimes, but it became known in a different way. And I think there was this push to very quickly say, how can we help? How can we fix? What can we do to get a handle on this? I think a lot of positions came out of that. I think also the positions became elevated out of that. So I was a senior diversity officer at my previous institution, and we saw directors of diversity and other things, but now we're seeing them elevated, brought up so that they are reporting to the president, brought up so they're at the top tier of leadership, where changes can actually be made, because it's getting a hold of these systemic issues that really needs the work right now. So is it great to celebrate Martin Luther King Day or to give highlight to Hispanic Heritage Month? Absolutely. But let's talk about the systemic issues and the actual work. That's what the positions need to be doing. That's how they're going to be the most effective.
So I love that. What a great introduction and great summary. And I want to pick up on this notion of systemic issues. Look, you can't open a paper these days, in my opinion, without reading university brings in expert on diversity, and usually the next line is either and is applauded by ... or is not applauded by ... And it just seems to me, and my thinking may be overly simplistic here, but it's not that those moments aren't helpful. That's fine. The trainings, let's do them. But to really get to the systemic nature of fostering diversity, equity, and inclusion, that's more of like a DNA kind of thing. And what I'd love to get your view on that generally, and and to what extent might a position like yours try to get to the DNA of an institution to sort of address these issues in a positive fashion?
So when I'm looking at anything, I never call them trainings, because training insinuates I'm going to teach you how to do this thing. It's going to take us maybe an hour, and you're going to go out in the world and be able to do it, and it's going to be perfect, no issues. And DEI is not like that. None of these issues are like that. They're deeply rooted. You were using the word systemic, which I think is absolutely appropriate to use. They're difficult. They're sensitive. They're emotional. I think that what we need to do is look at workshopping, detailed discussion, really challenging ourselves to talk about how we feel and who we are, about our bias, about how we were raised, about, what my uncle always said, or my mom or my dad always said, and now someone's told me that's not right. So we're challenging not only a person's unconscious thoughts, which they have to bring to the forefront and deal with, but then we're also dealing with, well, now you're telling me that my grandma was wrong and my dad was wrong, and I have to confront that. How is my whole history marred? So it's a very challenging thing. So trainings can't do it. And I think we make the mistake in general in higher education and otherwise saying, well, let's get a trainer or let's get some trainings, because that's not the approach. It has to be consistent conversations, and it has to be talking about policies. If there's a policy that exists that is not inclusive or is extremely exclusive, it has to be addressed. That's how we start to change these systemic issues. And we have to talk about why we're addressing it. We have to make it a part of who we are inherently. Now, I have that at Chestnut Hill College. Our mission is inclusive and powerful and holistic, and just talking about how we welcome everyone in where they are and help them to get where they want to go and how they want to be. And we do that without distinction or exclusion. And it's just really important to carry that through as far as possible.
So let's pick up on the idea of forums. I think it's an excellent point and a very important one to say that it can't be just a training. It has to be discussions, workshops, addressing bias. But I'm presuming that implicit in what you're saying, LaKeisha, is the necessity for some kind of ongoing discussion. How does one create space for that? And what are the forums that make the most sense to you to accomplish that in an ongoing basis?
I think you're dead on with that assessment. And when we say, or when I say ongoing, I do somewhere between 3 to 6 different workshops, presentations of the like a semester, where we're talking about different issues, different things going on in the world. We have student forums where we sit down and let students come to us. And when I say us, it's myself and the chief of mission and ministry, where we allow students to just voice where they're at, how they're feeling, what their experiences have been, so that we can say, is there an issue here? Let's dig a little deeper. Let's investigate. And then let's go back to the students so they understand what we have done, what we can done, and understand what the challenges are for us as well. Because we're administrators, we're top tier leadership, but we're human beings. There's a hierarchy to deal with. So not everything can be fixed in a moment. And we need to make sure that students understand that people understand that, because otherwise then they walk away feeling unheard. And that's never what we want to do. So we want to ensure that people feel heard. We want to ensure that we're listening. We want to ensure that there's repetitive conversation, and we're continuously going back to people to say, this is what we heard. This is what we've done. What's next?
And do you find, it seems to me that when conversations unfold, particularly with students, but often with faculty and staff too, it's not unusual that let's call them challenges or problems will be defined, and whether there's an explicit ask, I feel like when I'm in those meetings, what I'm saying to myself is there some sort of structural or policy change embedded in this discussion, and we have to figure that out together? Is that a part of these forums, or where does that work happen, if that's a fair question?
It is, absolutely. So typically, if I hear something from a student, even from faculty or staff, where something feels inequitable, something feels a little bit off. I try to ask as many questions as possible, get the information that I need. That might mean speaking to 2 or 3 other people just to really get the landscape understood. And then I'm moving to go to leadership to have those conversations. Hey, we're hearing a lot about X, or we're hearing a lot about Y. Let's start digging in. Why are we doing things this way, or why aren't we doing things that way? And trying to get a full understanding of what is and isn't happening. And then maybe there needs to be a policy change, or maybe the policy just hasn't been explained. So it feels terribly inequitable, but perhaps it's not, or it's not meant to be. No matter what happens, I think it's important to deal with the reality that someone is feeling. If somebody comes to me and says, I think this is unfair, or I don't feel good about this, I have to deal with their reality, figure out what's going on, and then be transparent about the explanations and the next steps.
So you've alluded to this, and I'd like to pick up on it just for a moment. Of course, Chestnut Hill College, the greatest private college in Pennsylvania, possibly the country, was founded by the Sisters of St. Joseph in the early 1900s as a women's college. Talk a little bit about how the mission and legacy of the Sisters of St. Joseph align with the work that you are so excellently striving to accomplish.
One of the things, there are many things I love about the Sisters of St. Joseph, actually, but one of the things that really drew my attention is that they call themselves women of fire and rock. Fire is something that can be an ending, but it's also a beginning, because once fire has passed through an area, now it's time to rebuild. It's time to till the soil again. It's time to see what can be anew. And rock is foundational, and it's strong and hopefully not going anywhere. When I think about them being the women of fire and rock, I think about how important it is right now to change our landscape, to look at what's going on. In so many ways, the fires have been burning. Things have begun to change. So now, how do we make these changes foundational and strong like rock, and how do we move forward? In the mission of the institution itself, holistic learning, holistic education, inclusive nature, making sure that everyone feels a part, making sure that everyone has a voice, making sure that everyone is heard. All of that is intrinsic to my work. I don't know if I could do the work the way that I do at another institution, just because our mission is so important to us at Chestnut Hill.
Wonderful summary. So we've got about a minute left, and I'm going to throw a reasonably, in my opinion, difficult question at you with not too much time, so forgive me. It just seems to me that when we genuinely address issues of inclusion, diversity, equity, that it's almost an automatic that there are going to be uncomfortable moments, that there will be moments of potential division. And by the way, let me just say that constant agreement might be overrated, meaning that we don't have to agree all the time. I'll just throw that out as a possibility. But what's your view on trying to move the needle forward on issues that might bring discomfort among some? And how do we do that in a nurturing way, hopefully, so that people can still talk about difference, but do it with dignity? Is that a fair question?
It absolutely is. Absolutely is a fair question. So every single workshop, presentation, anything I do, I go right ahead and say, we're going to respect each other. We're going to try to understand each other. We're going to be curious. I always make sure that we say that in the beginning of anything I do. I ensure that I say it's okay to be uncomfortable. I get uncomfortable too, and that's okay as well. Lean into that, because uncomfort means learning, and learning means the potential for change and opportunities. So we need to address it. We need to say, we know we're going to be uncomfortable. We know some of this might be upsetting, but let's talk about that. Don't shy away from it. Don't run. Let's lean into it.
I love it. So lean into the discomfort, and by virtue of that, learn and change for the better. In a little bit, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Dr. LaKeisha Thorpe will tell us a little bit about her personal journey and how her education set the stage for the amazing career that she has today. This is Public Health America. I'm your host, Dr. William Latimer. We'll be right back.
We built a media network for you.
BronxNet TV.
Come learn in your new state-of-the-art studios at Lehman College.
At Mercy College.
And coming soon to the South Bronx in the Hub.
Inspire with your stories, culture, history.
Your Bronx on BronxNet.
Engage with us.
Connect with us at your channels and at bronxnet.tv.
Learn, engage, inspire. BronxNet TV.
From the Bronx
to the world.
BronxNet.
Welcome back to Public Health America. I'm your host, Dr. William Latimer. So LaKeisha, in this second segment of the program, I always open with the same question, which is, where were you born and what were some of your formative experiences?
So I actually was born not too far from where you are. I was born in Tarrytown, New York.
Sure.
Grew up in Westchester County in Ossining. I went to St. Anne's Elementary School, it's closed now, but it was just such a sweet little, Catholic school that I went to that I loved the experiences I had there. One thing that I think was amazing about my upbringing is differences were not weird to me. My best friends, we were all first generation kids. We all had a parent or both parents who were born elsewhere, which again, looking back on it now, it's like, wow, how cool is that? But at the time it was just regular old, this is the way it is. I had friends whose parents were from Ecuador or Portugal, Italy, Ireland, Philippines. We were all really close friends as kids and just grew up going to each other's houses, eating each other's food, knowing, at this house we do this, at that house we do that. And it was a beautiful thing. And it just allowed me to see how rich differences can be.
That sounds like such a lovely upbringing, and it's making me hungry. I want to go to a Portuguese restaurant and have fish. Yeah, that's so great. So you talk a little bit about where did you do your K through 12? Or you told me, was it St. Anne's? Yeah. And that was was that a K through 12 or?
It was K through 8, and then I went to Ossining High School for 1 year, and then moved to Pennsylvania, where I went to Bethlehem Catholic.
Got it. Okay. And then from high school, what was the next step for you?
I went immediately to college. This is going to make me sound really old. Back then, the idea of a gap year wasn't anything that was floating around. It was go right to school. So I went to Penn State University. I started at small campus. Then I went to University Park. I started a small campus mostly because my mother had been in a really bad car accident my senior year. So I didn't want her to have to drive too far. I didn't want things to be too hard for her. So I didn't want to go too far away right away. But I loved my time at Penn State in the sense that it challenged my leadership skills. It challenged me to find my own agency and voice. If something wasn't to my liking, I was able to say, wait a second, and find avenues to make changes and to help others. And then, the great thing about a huge university like that is there's so much to research, there's so much to read, there's so much to look into. Anything you have an interest in, there's a class or a club or something about it. So I was really able to experience with that. It was a lot of fun.
Penn State, obviously a fantastic school. What did you major in, and what was the journey to the selection of that major?
The journey was hilarious. I came in thinking I want to do communications. I want to be interviewed and interview and be a radio host or be a show host or do something. I had all these kind of lofty media dreams. And then I took one psychology course and I was like, no, I want to help people. So I decided to be a psych major. And then I thought, I'm going to be a psych major. I'm going to have my own business. So I'll do a business minor. And I thought it was a good idea to take a bulk of business classes that I would need in one semester. That was bad. It's horrible. I do not like business classes. I found out the hard way, and it really hit my GPA hard because I just had no interest in the entire semester. So I had to really fight my way back through that, and then come to find out what I really loved. which was my African American literature and history courses. So I did a minor in African American and urban literature. And then I also developed this amazing love for biology and anatomy. So I actually did like a biological sciences sort of tag along with my psychology degree. And then I got out of school and actually ended up being a radio host for a little while and started doing speeches and editing and speech writing and really leaning on that English experience that I had. I worked with the elderly for a time. I feel like I did a lot of different things until I fell back in love with higher ed.
You know, what I admire about that narrative, which I think is so important for people to hear, is that it wasn't a linear path, right? I mean, you tried various things, and let's face it. I mean, you know, going to business class and realizing that isn't what you wanted to do, that's a gem in and of itself, even though it might have been rough for a year after that, just because of what, as you said, it affected your GPA, but obviously you came out of that and then found, you know, a couple of disciplines that really resonated with you, but it took some time. So I think that's an important message. I think a lot of times young people think they're supposed to know everything going in. And I think that's a mistake. It's fine if you do, but it's just as fine to not. And a lot of it's about the journey. And clearly you've had a journey that's led to great success. Talk a little bit about, was there something during your undergraduate experience that was either challenging and then you figured out a way to overcome it, and or was particularly protective and helpful in moving your work along?
I'd say there are probably two things. As I had mentioned, my mom had a bad car accident my senior year of high school. So it affected how things started off for me freshman year. No sooner had freshman year got started, she wasn't driving and actually was in another car accident. So it was like this, you know, kind of nasty side effects from one accident and then another. And it really affected everything, not only her health, but also our financial situation. So as a college student, I had to work. And I had to figure out how to balance my own finances. I had to figure out how to do a lot of things on my own because she couldn't be there for me physically as much as she wanted to be. And then she was dealing with her own health and her own healing while I was away. So it was a really difficult time in that way, really just trying to balance all of that. I think that students today deal with far more, but at that time it felt so overwhelming and so exhausting to get through all of it.
Sure. I mean, and I'm sorry that your mom had to go through that, and clearly stress on family, you know, family of origin is, there's nothing larger in terms of the impact in this case on the adult child that is then learning. We've had a lot of examples of where that sort of stress was the primary thing that was being sorted out among guests and among current students. So let's talk a little bit about the next step. After undergrad, you did a variety of things. When did you decide to go back to continue your education, and where did you go?
So I started to work as a part-time evening recruiter, and I love that. I was at a community college, which was a lot of fun, just meeting different types of people. Because I was working in the evening, I would have adult learners, I would have traditional learners coming in with their parents. So it was kind of like the gamut of experiences. And I would bring concerns that they had and current students had and concerns that I had to leadership, but they wouldn't always go anywhere. And from my office, I could see the boardroom where those leadership meetings would happen. And I kept thinking to myself, if I could just get in there, if I could get in that room and talk to leadership, I know that they would hear me and I could make a difference, and I could help students like myself. I could help students like my students who are struggling. And that's when I started to think about what my next steps might be. Do I want to go back to college? What would I even do? How would I do it? And as I mentioned before, my mom was dealing with a lot of health problems still. So I knew I couldn't be a full-time student. So I had to figure out the best way to do things.
And where did you end up going?
I ended up at Goddard College in Vermont. It was a low residency program where I did my MFA. And it was a great experience. It played right into my love of English that I took right from my undergraduate experience. And I was able to go back to doing some acting, to doing screenwriting, to doing playwriting, just having a really good time being creative and building my own voice.
And so that's, and, I mean, within the context of fine arts and liberal arts, which clearly you have had a pretty significant grounding in, it just seems to me that that kind of experience is so applicable to so many things. I mean, just the ability to write, the ability to think conceptually, the ability to communicate to other audience, whether in the case of the MFA through acting, but also through writing. To talk a little bit about this, what you see as the significance of that, particularly today in terms of the value of a liberal arts education.
The thing about liberal arts that I think is wonderful is it brings you back to that humanities. It makes you question and understand what's been going on with humanity since our existence, since we finally decided to write things down, since we decided to tell each other stories. When we start talking about that, we can understand our foundations and our cultures. As I mentioned with my friend group when we were in elementary school, how different we all were. But it's because we went to each other's houses, ate each other's food, listened to each other's stories, listened to each other's parents talking about our countries of origin, their countries of origin, that I think helped us to understand each other and understand the world. A liberal arts education does that. It introduces you to so much. So yes, if you're going to be a doctor or if you're going to be a lawyer or anything like that, yes, you're getting that discipline, that foundation that you need, but understanding how humanity has acted and reacted to things that have happened throughout our existence is key to understanding how you're going to be at your best, whatever that profession is.
I love the multicultural country element of your background. I mean, that would be such even just focusing on that would be a topic of a great book. With about a minute left, LaKeisha, if there was one thing that you could say to young people or non-traditional age students in the Bronx or urban settings or Philadelphia about the benefit of a liberal arts education, what would that be?
Enjoy it. It's okay to not know specifically what the next step is or specifically what class you're going to encounter. It's okay to have that unknown. Get in there and have the experience of being a college student. Talk to your academic advisors, talk to your student experience mentors, those people that are going to help guide you through, because they're going to keep you progressing. But take everything as an opportunity, because it is. Even the classes you hate are going to teach you something. And don't give up. It can get hard, but don't give up.
Excellent advice. I want to thank Dr. LaKeisha Thorpe of Chestnut Hill College in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Chestnut Hill, Pennsylvania. I want to thank our viewers for tuning in. This is Public Health America. I'm your host, Dr. William Latimer. We'll see you next time. Take care.